It's summer, we're in Champagne, and it's raining. This is very classic for here, but we're in Ai right now. And this is a great example of a beautiful place to grow grapes. Because we're on a hill, you have this slope, you have very poor soils on the side of hills because of gravity, but you also have soils that are draining grapes. You know, they're very particular, especially Pinot Noir. They don't want to get their feet too wet. You really want to have a place where you have well-drained soils because of that. And you can see all of these hills are just rolling across. They're all south-facing, which means they're getting lots of sun. And you can see as far as the eye goes, you'll see that there are grapes on these slopes. This means that we're going to get some fabulous wine from here. And each one of these blocks will be vinified into a wine separately that then go into a blend, even if it's from the same vintage. So I'm in Pressoria, and this is a really cool immersive experience in a museum. It starts with the terroir itself. These are the large chalk deposits that Champagne is based on top of. That happens millions and millions of years ago. They have this explanation here. Slowly, the Champagne hillsides took shape in the subsoil and the microscopic fossils. Over time, they kind of come together. So you could see here, this is how everything is forming, layer upon layer upon layer. This is 90 million years ago. All of these crustaceans have died, and they've been pushed down and pushed down. We're at 88 million years ago now. There's still water above it. Most of France was actually underneath water for a long period of time. 70 million years. There's still more to go. Most of the dinosaurs have not even really come yet. Now we see more of the dinosaurs 60 million years ago. Once we hit 20 million years, we're in the last ice age, which is so cool. These sedimentary rocks are forming underneath the water. We're heading in towards the ice age, where everything is frozen and then this rock is exposed. We have a shift in the earth. We have Paris, we have Ai, which is starting to form. We have an erosion going on. And now we have this new era, back to where we are now in the Valley de Mar, with a little bit of water left over into our present day. So this is all the chalk and the other sedimentary rock on top, just created where we are. So cool. We're getting into climate next, and you can see it's winter moving into spring. You have the vines that have shut down, the rains, which are so important for filling up the water table on the bottom. And then we have growth of the roots underneath the ground, reaching towards that water. Then, as we come into spring, you start to see all these roots sucking up the water, making it part of it. We have more rain that's creating greener grass around, that cover crop that's all around the vines. Everything is starting to grow back again. We have flora and fauna coming back into the picture. The vines are just starting to come out. They're really starting to pop out of their new buds again. And then as we get into more of summer, we start to see the true growth of the vineyards. They go through veraison. They end up getting those really fat, ready to be picked berries. And then we get into harvest directly after that. But it's this climate of this region that's so important. It's continental, it's affected by the Atlantic Ocean. But there's also a lot of rains that come here. Sometimes you can get snap frosts that happen, lots of rains, which are not always great for the grapes. We get these small, tiny bunches. Champagne has always been known as a region that has trouble ripening grapes, and that's why they've really been going towards sparkling wine. But, you know, it's this region with its climate, with its terroir, that makes such great sparkling wines. So this is kind of like what I think it is. It's like the root system, and we're walking underneath the vines. It honestly feels like the roots, like you would be underground, sucking up all the water, is what it feels like. And I guess that's exactly what is happening, because we have entered a completely new area hidden underneath the vines. We have two really important things happening. There are vines growing under my feet, which is amazing, reaching out into underneath, under the ground. We have a dead vine here. This is what can happen when we don't have enough nutrients going on in the soil, when we also have bugs, when we also have things like phylloxera that can come and eat the rootstock and affect the roots. We also have a very healthy vine over here where it's picking up elemental items that are really coming in and feeding the plant. It's taking that minerality from the soil, and we're seeing this massive ecosystem underneath the soil. So this is all the parts of a vineyard really coming together. So in April, we have bud break. You can see the little buds growing off to the side. In May, we see leaves start to pop out of the top there. There we go. We're really seeing a lot more budding, which will bear fruit. But we're going to remove a lot of this so that we don't have too much concentration in these plants. We're going to start putting the branches into trellising. As we get into June, we're going to try to promote the grapes to grow. So little berries will get bigger as we cut back into green harvesting, trimming all this pruning to maximize sunlight, but also concentrate the energy of the vine into the grapes themselves. Through August, the grapes start to pull in sugars and aromas from the soil and everything around them. They go through veraison and they start to reach maturity. You can see these little bunches growing on the vines. And then they start to be monitored for harvest, which is in September. The grapes are ripe, they're ready to go, the bunches are cut off the vines, and then we go into the winemaking process. But it's not over yet for the vine. While the bunches have already picked in October, sap returns back into the roots, and we start to see the leaves fall down, the leaves change color, and they just fall to the ground. And this is starting a new life as the vine shuts down for winter. Once the vine itself shuts down and we move into the cold December, it's fully dormant, and we're waiting for the next year. In that next year, we'll start to see the dormancy continue in January, but come into February, and when we get into March, we start to see pruning happening and preparing the vines for the next year. Like they get one haircut a year, and this is it. We're keeping the important vines and then moving forward so that the vine wakes up and starts growing only what's important. All right, let's get into a grape being grown. This is the sprout that's coming out. This is just the initial start of the plant growing so that you can get the leaves, which are basically like giant solar cells. They're pulling in all of the light from the sun to make photosynthesis so that we can collect sugars within the grapes themselves. That tiny little bead of grapes down there, that is what's going to grow into the final wine grapes. So it's just a tiny little cluster right now. You see the flowering is about to happen, which is really what's going to take them into becoming grapes. There we go. That's their flowering. This flowering will allow them to be pollinated. And they have these tiny little starburst like flowers that just pop out like popcorn. They actually kind of look cute. So those are the flowers, and this is actually in real life. You can see how they're growing. So inside we have the little pod that's starting after they've been flowered. They've been going through the maturation process. So this is the beginning of the maturation process. Whether it's a red grape or a white grape, this is how it starts off. You have this pulpy center. This is before the grape. Once it goes through veraison, they change color. So we have the color change literally happening within this. There we go. That's our color change. So now the grape is really growing. It's nice and soft, and the inside is quite soft as well. It's just growing and growing. Those are the seeds that are about to form, and we're starting to get differentiation between the seeds, the outside, the skin of the grape, and the pulp of the grape. It's still growing. There we go. The seeds are forming now. Once those seeds turn a dark brown color, just like this, then the grape is going to be ready. And on the outside, it's fully ready with its own yeast on the outside protecting it. And that's a wine grape. So the grapes have been harvested and now they have to be processed into wine. So we have this processing that happens. The grape bunches are brought in, and they're actually brought in these bins like this. Every house has their own bins. You can see the name on the Champagne Belcar Samon. We have Moet and Chandon. Each house brings in their grapes and they start the winemaking process. This is an older style press where you'd basically put all the bunches into this press and it would come down and the juice would come out through the bottom here. Now we have more pneumatic presses that use a bladder, which means that they don't harm the skins as much. This would be for white wines, and you can also see it happen for red wines that are going into Blanc de Noir. These types of presses wouldn't be used for red wine production. because you want to keep the grape skins in contact with the juice to create that color. As you can see, this is what happens. Before they even go into the press, you'll have a sorting table that'll sort through all the berries and get rid of all of the stems. It's actually really cool. You could touch this. Ooh, all the berries moving across the table. And this is all part of the sorting process. This is where man comes into it. We had grapes growing in the vineyard before, doing their own thing, and now we start the process of actually making the wine. Winemaking is starting. The grapes are fermenting. They're going through the process of becoming wine, starting in these stainless steel tanks and moving into oak. The winemakers are creating this base cuvee. This goes through so many different processes. Each wine is made region by region, grape by grape. You get this whole unique flavor that they're looking for. This is the tasting panel that makes up what that final blend looks like. These people will be tasting between 100 to 200 different wines for that final blend that make up what that champagne is going to taste like. All right, then that gets combined. We add in the liqueur de tirage, and we're going to start that secondary process of fermentation all over again. The wines are getting bottled because that secondary part of fermentation happens within the bottle itself. Bottles are cleaned and washed. They are filled with that base cuvee wine, and then they just close with a cap closure for all of that fermentation to just take place within inside of the bottles again. This is all part of that secondary fermentation, readying the bottles to be sitting on their side with that extra lees in there and that sugar for that secondary fermentation. This is at least going to be 15 months, but it can be much longer. A lot of houses will do at least 24 to 36 months. And they rest for some time before they are riddled to get that yeast to the neck of the bottle. And then they go into the disgorging process.
Thank you so much for watching this episode. If you felt like you learned something, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!